Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 88 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. Now, after our Black Monday episode where we went through fixing our franchise, I received intel that Mark had bought a one-way ticket to Thailand and had no intention to return. So joined virtually here for this podcast is, of course, the best co-host in the game. It is Mark Henry Jr. Mark, how are you doing this evening? How's Thailand?
Yeah, I forgot my camera on the way to Bangkok. Yeah, it's the only city in Thailand that I could think of because of the hangover. But yeah, that's all I got on Thailand. Yeah, it looks like Cliff Kingsbury, to keep it PG, is having a great time in Thailand. I'll leave it at that based on what I saw on Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to get into the Wildcard Weekend. We're going to talk about all the games. We're going to preview the divisional round of the playoffs. So the teams are condensed. The show might be a little condensed, although you've probably heard us say that before. So we'll see how it goes. But we're going to sort of combine a preview with a review here so we can talk a little bit about the upcoming games. With no Eagles game to talk about in the review portion, though, we're just going to dive right in and go in chronological order here. And we'll start with the Seattle Seahawks, who traveled to the San Francisco 49ers, and they lost 23-41. I think the game was a little bit closer than that score shows.
Mm-hmm.
San Fran was down 17-16 at halftime, but they scored 25 straight in the second half of the game. They sort of ran away with it. Christian McCaffrey ends with 119 yards rushing. He had 17 yards receiving and a receiving TD. Deebo Samuel, 32 yards rushing, 133 yards receiving, and a touchdown. All in all, San Fran had 505 yards of offense, and they only punted one time. I thought watching this game, I really thought Seattle had a chance in the first half. Brock Purdy started out poorly in this game, but he leveled out as the game went along, and their defense sort of took control of the game. Their playmakers, obviously, he's got an absurd amount of playmakers, and it just sort of took over. And so San Francisco ends up moving on to the next round, and it was this the least close game? I think the Cowboys game, but in one of the least exciting games, I guess, but I didn't think for the first half this game was in question.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a game. For a long portion of this game, for about 2.5 quarters of this game, I think the biggest takeaway for San Fran is probably that you got the best version of Deebo Samuel that you've gotten all year long. And obviously, he's one of the more versatile and one of the most interesting players in the NFL, one of the most fun players to watch. And when he's going, it's really hard to game plan to stop him. And, not to mention Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk are also on that offense. So you can't devote too many resources to Deebo Samuel, or else, you just get picked apart elsewhere. And that's kind of the numbers game that San Francisco has. And I'm sure, Kyle Shanahan's been dreaming of an offense like this for years, I'm sure. And it almost renders the quarterback position as almost unimportant as who's playing it. When you have this many guys going this way from a weapons perspective, and when the offensive line is as elite as it is. And I think Kyle knows that this is probably, a short window. And that sounds dumb because a lot of their talent is really young, but they have multiple offensive linemen up this offseason on free agency. It's going to be hard to keep all 4 of those weapons healthy together and playing through a full season going forward, considering the fact that McCaffrey, Deebo, Kittle, and Ayuk have all had injury history. If Shanahan wants to go and finally chase that elusive Super Bowl ring that, he's gotten close to a couple times, I think he knows, quarterback aside, this is probably the best roster he's ever going to have. And a big part of that is because they're not paying a quarterback, because they haven't really figured out what they're doing there yet. I guess they're paying Jimmy G like backup money, but this is the roster that Kyle has to win with, kind of. And it's an interesting situation to be in when you juxtapose it with the fact that they have Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy playing quarterback.
Yeah, it's really bizarre what they've been able to do. And I should have pulled up the graphics, but I saw like the EPA per play and like the completion percentage over expectation stuff and like the yards after catch. It was a graph with like yards after catch and average depth of target. And the 49ers are just way up here away from everybody else. It's just insane the talent they have on this roster, and it's going to be a problem for the Cowboys next week, and it's probably going to be a problem for the Eagles the week after that. I think they're just such a good football team, but I did feel like you saw some chinks in the armor. They should not. It should not have been a 1-point game at halftime against a team like Seattle, and so I thought that was sort of the theme of this wild card weekend. Is there's chinks in the armor for all of these teams, maybe less so for San Fran than the others that we're going to get to. Go ahead.
We're going to get to an interesting conversation about the quarterback position because we were talking about it off air here a little bit. But first off, I want to ask a question, and I'll give Good Morning Football credit for the question. But I thought it was interesting. Which head coach currently in the playoffs can impact their legacy the most with a Super Bowl ring? They were arguing for Shanahan at one point. Because, once he gets a ring, he can officially kind of be in that rare air of, special McVay, all-time Madden, all-time coaches. But then they were saying, what if Doug Peterson wins the second ring with the second franchise in Jacksonville, who has never won one? So it's an interesting question. Then someone said McCarthy because everyone thinks he's an idiot. So if he won a second ring with a second team, with like a second storied franchise at a certain point, they'd have to give him credit. Which one do you think it is? Is it one of the ones I mentioned, or is it someone I didn't say?
It's Doug. It's Doug Peterson. No coach in NFL history has won a Super Bowl with two different teams, so he would be the first one to do it, and he would do it the year after the Jags won 2 games. Like
Wait, is that? I didn't know that's true. I didn't know that no one's ever done it with 2 teams.
Yeah, that is just based on a quick Google search as I was looking it up to see. It says, so Google said 25 coaches in NFL history have appeared in more than one Super Bowl during their careers. No head coach has ever won a Super Bowl with 2 different teams.
Wow. Well, McCarthy's up for that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it's got to be Doug for becoming the first one to do that, doing it in Jacksonville of all places in his first year there, which, I mean, and obviously like they would have to beat the Chiefs, so he'd have to knock off his mentor Andy Reid, and then they would have to go knock off the Bills or Cincinnati, so they would have it's not going to happen. Like they'd have a tremendously difficult road, but if it were to happen, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other, Dable. He's like too young for that conversation to even matter really. I feel like McDermott won't be the one who gets the full credit if the Bills win anyway. Yeah, I think that I actually would, if you go with that, I'll go with McCarthy because I think people do think he's an idiot, including me. And if he won a second ring and he broke that streak and he won a second ring with a second franchise, that would have to force people to start giving him a little credit probably.
Yeah, probably so. Flipping over to the Seattle side for a minute, I think Seattle fans, you've got to feel good about your season. Like they were expected to be bad and they made it to the playoffs. And even going beyond that, looking to the future, obviously you've got quarterback decisions to make, but their rookie draft class is one of the best draft classes I remember. Getting 2 starting tackles, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas. You get Kenneth Walker, who looked really good, Tariq Woolen in the 5th round. So the building blocks are there for them to become a really good team. They've got draft capital. They just got to figure out what they're doing, at quarterback, improve their defense. But Seattle fans, I feel like, should walk away. I mean, they were playing with house money. They probably shouldn't have made it to the playoffs to begin with, but the season that they had, I think, is incredible. And Seattle fans should have all the confidence in the world moving forward.
Yeah, I think I said this either last week or the week before, but if people didn't hate Pete Carroll, he'd be in the Coach of the Year conversation for what he did with Seattle, and I think he displayed that for a half. And I think a big part of the reason they stayed in the game is because Pete Carroll's done a better job against Kyle Shanahan than any other coach in football. I think now he's like 10-3, and all three losses came this year. I thought that I heard that stat this weekend on Twitter, and it showed in the first half. They kind of had an answer for everything San Fran did, and then talent won out. And I think that's kind of what happened there. But yeah, if you're Seattle, you have to feel great. You have two first round picks, obviously, and I think the one is like 6 or 7, something in that top range. It's definitely a bright future for Seattle. They're trying to. It seems from everything he said in the post game, they're sticking with Gino. They're going to give Gino some sort of deal, which that'll be very interesting to see what they do there. And it'll also be very interesting to see if they're willing to pull the trigger on drafting a quarterback. Way back when, they gave Matt Flynn a lot of money after he was a longtime backup in Green Bay. And then they went and drafted Russell Wilson. So it'd be interesting to see. Maybe they gave Gino a 2 or a 3 year deal, maybe a 3 year deal where you could get out after 2 years in a bit of a Derek Carr situation. And maybe you go and draft a quarterback in with that second pick of the first round, or maybe even that first pick of the first round. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a game of what could have been, because the fumble at the goal line's killer. But I think you mostly are just happy with this season, and you look forward to building next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's talk about the wild game on Saturday night. The Los Angeles Chargers.
Wait. Actually, I'm sorry. Real quick,
Okay.
before we get there, I think we should have the conversation about the 49ers quarterback,
Okay.
because we were talking about that off air and I teased it a little bit. I I think, and I think Shane thinks that my opinion is ridiculous on this. I think Shane's opinion is ridiculous that they're going to go back to Trey Lance after this, unless something happens where Brock Purdy flames out spectacularly in the playoffs. I think, have they won 12 straight now, or is it 11 straight?
I think
Whatever
it's
that
11
is.
straight.
11 straight. Yeah. I just don't think you can make that move. I don't think you can bench Purdy. And I don't think it's a situation where you have to trade Lance or cut Lance or anything like that. But I think it's probably a situation where Jimmy G will not factor into their plans next year. I think we both agree with that. But I think we probably both agree that Purdy and Lance will both be on the team. But I just can't see a scenario where they won't start Brock Purdy, barring something crazy happening in the last game that they play.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would at least give a fair shot to Lance to be your starter going into next year. I mean, if he's just horrendous in training camp and Purdy looks really good, whatever. But you cannot trade 3 first-round picks to go get a raw quarterback, and then he gets hurt in the second start of his career, and then you just move on from him. Like, that's crazy to me. That if you do that, that's just horrific process in terms of trading up for that guy and having such a short leash on him that he gets hurt in his second start and you're done. So I would not have made that move for Lance to begin with, and certainly wouldn't have made that move for Lance and then sat him for an entire year. Like it's been the whole process to get here has been littered with awful decisions every step of the way. Now they find themselves here, but I would have to be looking at Lance. I mean, they went after Lance for a reason. His playmaking ability with his feet, like getting into that modern NFL offense, being able to design some different things, and I think Kyle Shanahan wanted the ability to add more to the offense than what Jimmy G could give you. And does Brock Purdy do that? I don't think so. Now, obviously, Brock Purdy's younger, and he's got all the confidence in the world the way he's playing right now, but this offense is still so good because of the weapons and the scheme, not because of the quarterback. And you alluded to the fact, like, the time is coming when you can't keep those weapons together. And so you can't always be throwing to all these guys that are this wide open, because eventually that talent's going to start to fall off. And is Brock Purdy going to be able to survive and thrive in that situation? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see, I guess. But they certainly have some interesting decisions ahead of them.
I just don't think that what they traded for Lance should have an impact on what decisions they make necessarily at this point. Like I think that at this point they should just be evaluated for what the players they are. And I think I above everyone was making excuses for Lance on how he looked early in the season. And I think a lot of those excuses were and are still valid. But I will just say it's sobering, and it has to be sobering to go back and watch those Lance games and compare them even to the first games Purdy played and compare them to what Jimmy G obviously was able to do. Because I do think Trey Lance was handed a near perfect situation. Not in what happened. Obviously, there was weather, and then the second game was against a good defense. I can't exactly remember who, but it's there were factors against him, but in terms of the situation he was in with the players he had and the play calling he had, it's hard to excuse him looking bad. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to Purdy at this point, unless things go wrong, to give Trey Lance the job because you might have made a mistake 2 years ago trading too much. And by the way, I think Shanahan knows it's a mistake because Shanahan has been unwilling to play Lance, probably because of what he saw in practice, or was unwilling to play Lance last year. And even this year wasn't glowing about him in the offseason. And there were all the reports that he wanted Mac Jones and even preferred
Which
Fields.
also would have been a mistake.
That would have been a bigger mistake, in my opinion, because at least Trey Lance, you're moving up to swing high. You're aiming to hit a home run, and if you hit it, great. And I agree that the process has been messed up, and they've probably deterred Lance from getting better in their last 2 years. But I will say it's pretty incredible what they've done while blowing a top pick like that and not having a first rounder because of it the last couple years, and how good their roster still is pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see play out. I'm not sure there's definitely right and wrong answers. We just don't really know what they are yet, and the 49ers are going to have to figure that out. But they don't have to figure it out yet. They can at least gather one more game of data on Brock Purdy
Yes.
when they play this next weekend against Dallas. So let's move on.
Yeah.
Comment coming in here. Shanahan did all he could to push Jimmy G out the door. It says he has some faith in Lance.
Yeah, but they kept him around though. They wouldn't trade him either, and there were offers. They didn't want to give him up for like a third or a fourth. So
yeah, which turned out to be a good thing when Lance got hurt until Jimmy G got hurt as well. So 49ers are cursed with quarterback injuries.
Which, yeah, you said Purdy does he bring anything that Jimmy G doesn't? No, probably not. He's probably basically Jimmy G. But the thing about Jimmy G is Jimmy G would be fine if he didn't get hurt all the time. Like, if he didn't get hurt every single year, I think Shanahan probably would have just settled with Jimmy G and never would have made the Trey Lance move. But that's not the Jimmy G world we live in.
Yeah. Okay, let's roll on to the crazy Saturday night game, which was the Chargers going to Jacksonville. Man, this was a wild game. A lot of you might have turned this off at halftime and woken up the next day to a surprise. I certainly almost did. I wanted to watch this game, and so I was watching the game on the couch with my wife, and I was like, man, when the punt went off of the Jaguars guy's helmet and the Chargers went up 27-0, I was like, all right, let's just go watch them. Let's go watch a show or something. I'm done. And so we watched a sitcom show, and then I was like, it's coming back from half. They scored to make it 27-7. I'll just turn it back on and see. I'm going to suffer through this with Doug. And man, did that turn out to be a good decision. So under 2 minutes to go in the half, the Jags trailed 27-0. I tweeted this out at that moment. I said, I would be gutted if the Eagles playoff game goes this way. I really feel for the Jags. And of course I had to add an addendum there after the game was over saying what an idiot, because obviously that turned out to be a very poorly timed tweet, but the Jags outscored the Chargers 31-3 from that point to win the game. 4 interceptions in the first half, a punt going off a defender's helmet. The Jags were -5 in turnover differential. Like, they didn't even claw back into this game by forcing turnovers. They literally never forced a turnover. In the first half, Trevor Lawrence threw for 77 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. He was 17.7% completion percentage below expectation. In the second half, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, plus 8.3% completion percentage over expectation. Like, in the first half, Brandon Staley was all over the offensive game plan for the Jaguars. He was sitting on short routes the entire first half. And like, that's where you get the schematic things for that Brandon Staley does defensively. It was so good. He was all over it. But Doug Peterson pushed all of the right buttons. Like, going into halftime, you get the just got to keep chipping away speech. They go for 2, down 4 after the Joey Bosa unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. That 4th and 1 from the 41-yard line with 1:27 remaining, and he calls a timeout, which virtually guarantees you don't get the ball back if you don't convert. And then he converted with a flip to Travis Etienne, who stays in bounds. Like, that's a coaching point. It was just phenomenal coaching by Doug Peterson. He pushed all of the right buttons, I thought. Going for 2, down 4, and then going for it from the 41 while Brandon Staley kicked field goals from the 4, the 5, and the 22. The last of which would have turned a 2-score game into a 2-score game, 10 points to 13. It couldn't more perfectly show the differences between those two guys. The Chargers lost 13.1% winning percentage on 4th downs, and the Jags added 24% winning percentage. For me, like, being a head coach, it is about consistently doing the little things right. And Staley consistently costs his team the competitive advantage, from playing guys week 18 to all of these little things. Like, there's nothing wrong with being an elite defensive coordinator. And I think Brandon Staley is a very good defensive coordinator. I think the Chargers are making a mistake by retaining him. Now, they fired Joe Lombardi today, so that's at least a step in the right direction. But Brandon Staley should not be the head coach of an NFL team. Every team should want him as their DC, unless you've got DeMeco Ryans, but he should not be a head coach of an NFL football team.
Yeah, it's organizational malpractice that Sean Payton is available right now to come and coach your football team, and you're going to scapegoat Joe Lombardi and fire him and keep Brandon Staley around as if Joe Lombardi was the one kicking field goals from inside the 5. After being Mr. Aggressive, Mr. Analytics, Mr. I have a PFF subscription in his first year, all of a sudden he's, take the points. I'm going to be conservative with a lead. It reminds me of one of the dumbest coaches of all time, Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy had something on his clipboard. He had a sticker behind, or whatever it was, clipboard, I don't know, whatever he held. And it said, "Be you." And he had to look at it. He said he looked at it every once in a while to remind himself how to coach. Brandon Staley needs that "Be you" sticker. Figure out what you are and do it. Like, at this point, like, people, I think he turtled, and he had got so much pushback when he was the aggressive guy going for it on 4th and going for 2. He got so much pushback in the times that it went wrong that he decided, you know what, I'll cowtail to the angry mob, and I'll grab my pitchfork and I'll start kicking field goals, and I'll start, never going for 2, which is the wrong decision. So you got to figure out who you are and stick with it. You can't be changing who you are mid-season or between your first and second season. He's a terrible, terrible head coach. And like you said, probably a very good defensive coordinator. His teams consistently give up like 5+ yards per carry, but I guess that's the scheme, and I guess that's the NFL we're in nowadays, and that's fine, I guess. But his scheme as a defensive coordinator is certainly not enough to make up for his shortcomings as a head coach in that role. So you're probably right. He probably should never be a head coach again, to be quite honest. But we'll be talking about him next year, it appears, as a head coach of Justin Herbert and the Chargers, wasting
Yeah.
another year.
By the way, the Chargers, after going up 27-0, they had -2 rushing yards for the rest of the game. That's just
Yeah.
crazy. Here's another one. Teams with a +5 turnover differential in NFL history are 313-3. Literally a 1 in 100 shot to lose a game when you're +5 in turnover margin. And Brandon Staley managed to do it.
Real quick, I just want to say there's some Sean Payton slander in the chat, and Sean Payton's one of the greatest coaches of all time. I think he resurrected Drew Brees, who no one wanted. Nick Saban and the Dolphins picked Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees. Drew Brees went from being like the 11th or 12th best quarterback in football with the Chargers with LT and Antonio Gates to going to Sean Payton in New Orleans and immediately becoming a top 3 quarterback for the next 10 years and winning a Super Bowl. And, I think, I don't know how many NFC championships they went to. It had to be at least 3 or 4. So I think he had plenty of success. I mean, if he's not a great coach, then Andy Reid's not a great coach, and he's a choke artist as well, I guess.
Yeah, I'm a big Sean. Well, I won't say that I'm a big Sean Payton guy, but he's a good coach for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's not the best dude, I don't think, but he's definitely an incredible coach. I think he's honestly, and I've said this before. This is just something now it's coming up. Sean Payton, in my opinion, is the second greatest coach of my lifetime, behind Belichick. I think I don't know who's I don't even know who else is in the conversation really. But yeah, going back to this, I had Chargers -1.5 on a very small bet, and I never felt safe. How that just shows that you should never bet the Chargers in a big game, and I don't think I ever will again. If I ever on this podcast next year or going forward sound like I'm leaning towards the Chargers in a playoff game, just remind me, hey, Mark, hey, they're the
Staley.
Chargers. It's Brandon Staley, or just the Chargers are going to Chargers so hard.
This
But
this win probability graph is the most insane thing I've ever seen.
When it was 27-0, I was at least feeling okay, I think Jacksonville will probably make this a game and they'll probably get back in it, but it'll probably be too much too late. At that point, I was still the Chargers will probably win, but it'll probably end up being close. Once it was 27-7 and Jacksonville was getting the ball back in the third quarter, I was this they've turned the ball over 5 times and they're only down 20 points, and there's a lot of time left. The Chargers are in some trouble here. That's officially the moment that I realized they were in some trouble. And where did they punt from? Did they punt from the 38 or the 40? Wherever they punted from in Jacksonville territory, maybe my least favorite punt of the entire season this year.
Yeah, just tremendous cowardly conservative play there. No doubt about it, and it cost them. And now they can go think about it for the whole off season. And obviously, ownership didn't think about it hard enough because Staley should be gone. He should have been the first guy out of town. But at least Lombardi's a move in the right direction.
Well, we'll see who they hire. I mean, it's how do we know that they have any? How can you trust the Chargers in any way to make a good hire when their last 2 coaches are Brandon Staley at head coach and Anthony Lynn, who, for everything we can say about Brandon Staley, Anthony Lynn is the worst head coach I've ever seen in football, and that's the last guy that this GM
that's not true. Urban Meyer was a coach last
year.
year.
That's fair. I don't even count him. He was kicking kickers, and I won't even say what. It's a PG show, but.
Okay, let's move on to the Sunday games. Miami at Buffalo. Buffalo wins, but it was close, 34-31. The Bills are 3rd in the NFL in turnovers right now, despite only playing 16 regular season games. They turned it over 3 times Sunday, and they almost let the Dolphins win with their 3rd string quarterback. This was the Bills' third straight game with 3+ turnovers. Josh Allen threw 2 interceptions. He fumbled 3 times. He only lost 1. As much as the Bills tried to give that game away, the Dolphins just wouldn't take it. They had 4 false starts, including one on the final drive, to put them behind the sticks. Goes to a 1st and 15. 4 plays later, they have a 4th and 1, and they don't get the play in. They took a delay of game on a 4th and 1. Mike McDaniel said after the game he thought they got the first down, but you just can't make that mistake, much less make it in a playoff game. Per True Media, Miami took an average of 42.4 real-time seconds between plays this year, which was the third highest mark in the NFL. They also had the 3rd most delay of games. So there's criticism to be leveled at Mike McDaniel for his clock management. Overall, though, with a 3rd-string rookie quarterback, you compete with the Bills in a playoff game. You deserve your flowers for that. And I'm not going to sit on here and disparage Mike McDaniel too much. You never manage a clock before you become a head coach. And so he's a first-year head coach. It took Andy Reid a decade to get down clock management. And you could argue he still doesn't have it down at times. So I won't kill the guy for that in his first year, but that's a mistake they have to move on from and learn on. On the Bills side, though, Josh Allen. I don't know what you see when you watch Josh Allen, but I see him going down the hero ball path, circa Carson Wentz. Now, it's not as detrimental as Carson Wentz, who just completely lost his mind. But for whatever reason, Josh Allen is playing hero ball. He feels like every play he makes has to be an explosive play. He's not letting plays die. He's not taking his checkdowns. Mark, do you know what his average depth of target was in this game?
I do not.
16 yards. He had an average depth of target of 16 yards. The NFL average is like 7. Like, it's insane. Every throw. He never saw a bomb that he didn't want to throw. And so, for the Bills, they had a lot of margin to beat the Dolphins, and they barely squeaked by. They will get blown out by the Cincinnati Bengals if Josh Allen does not rein this in. And I don't know how you get him to do that. I don't know why he feels like he's having to play that way right now. But Josh Allen, if the Bills lose next weekend, there's a pretty good chance Josh Allen is the reason why.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you feel great about a Bills team that beat a team by 3 points when that team had a quarterback who went 18 for 45 for less than 5 yards per attempt. And then you take and you say, oh, well, if they put up 31 points and if they were only 18 for 45 for 220 yards passing, they must have been able to run the ball, right? No, absolutely not. Miami didn't run the ball at all. 10 carries for 23 yards. For Mostert, they couldn't get anything going on the ground. And they scored 31 points because of short fields and because of Josh Allen making mistakes. And, he, like you said, you can get away with that against Skylar Thompson. And you almost couldn't, but you did this time. You got away with it against Skylar Thompson. You will not get away with that against Joe Burrow. You will not get away with that against Patrick Mahomes. So you won't get away with that against, the 49ers if they get there. You won't get away with that against Jalen Hurts. So even the Cowboys probably. So I'm starting to think that the Bills are very much not in that top tier of teams that I expect to be in the Super Bowl. There are 5 points. We're going to talk a little bit about their game against the Bengals, and they got a couple breaks with some injuries for the Bengals, but I don't know how you feel great about what the Bills did on Saturday. Or was that was Sunday? Sunday.
Do you know what Skylar Thompson's EPA per play was?
What was it?
Negative 0.17. You know what Josh Allen's was?
What was it?
Negative 0.21.
Whew.
Josh Allen's EPA per play was worse than Skylar Thompson's in this game.
Which shows, by the way, how incredible of a job McDaniel did in this game to milk the amount of points he could out of Skylar Thompson, even if he went 18 for 45, even if he was negative on EPA. I think that McDaniel should get a ton of credit. And even though the press conference was a little bit clunky in how he kind of – I love McDaniel, but when he loses, especially like a close playoff game, it does start to be like, oh man, people are not going to love this as much anymore. But
Yeah.
I think he said something like, generally you do have a higher chance to convert 4th and 1 than 4th and 6, but it's all relative. Like it's something like that. It's like, all right, like let's not brush over that. Like that's not necessarily the right thing to say here.
No. Okay, well, I want to talk about another coach's press conference, and that is from the Giants-Vikings game. So the Giants win this game 31-24. First thing is, the Giants were never supposed to be here. Like, their roster is bad. This was supposed to be the rebuilding year. I can't remember the quote, and I couldn't go find it, but I feel like I remember Brian Dable even saying something about, like, the roster wasn't very good early, like, before in training camp. So this was not their expectation. And here they are not only in the playoffs, but they're winning a road playoff game. And so kudos to them. That's an impressive performance. Daniel Jones played the best game of his career. He was 24 of 35 for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 17 carries for 78 yards. Now, granted, it was against the 25th ranked defense in EPA per dropback, the 27th ranked defense in defensive DVOA. So this is not a good defense. The Vikings, they had won 11 games. They were 11-0 in one-score games. I do not remember where I saw this. I saw a clip of somebody saying this on Twitter, and so I can't source it. I can't credit it, but it's not my own. But they're saying it'd be like going to a casino, and you put all your money at the roulette table on red 11 times in a row, and you keep winning. Like, the hotel will not kick you out. They will comp your room to get you to stay because they know that your luck will run out and they want their money back. And the Vikings' luck finally ran out. In Week 16, when these teams matched up, Justin Jefferson had 12 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown. He had 6 for 43 at halftime in this game, and they held him to 1 catch for 4 yards in the second half. Like, Kirk Cousins turned to TJ Hawkinson, who had a good game, 10 for 129 yards, but he also checked it down to him for 2 yards on 4th and 8 to end the game. Kevin O'Connell, after the game, said this, quote, "The intent as a play caller, you're not going to call a primary concept or it's short of the sticks to gain. Looking back on it, maybe I could have been more clear and said, hey, this is where you want the ball to be," end quote. Like, this is a first-year head coach talking about a 35-year-old veteran quarterback they're paying $40 million a year saying,
Kirk Cousins is 35?
I think so.
That makes me feel like a million years old. Don't tell me that's true.
Hold on. Now you got me. Okay, he's 34.
Well,
there we
still.
go. It's better. He's 34.
That's still, wow. I would have guessed like 29, even though that's so stupid because I know he's been in the league forever now. But I still remember Michigan State. I'm sorry. I'll let you continue.
Oh,
that shocked me.
If Kyle Shanahan is saying that about Brock Purdy after a game, a rookie, I should have told him that we want to push the ball to this guy downfield. That makes sense, maybe. You're talking about a 34-year-old vet. Like, man, Kirk Cousins, that's just brutal. And so, obviously, they lose the game. Dexter Lawrence just wrecked this game. Mm-hmm. He had 8 pressures, which is the most by a defensive tackle in a postseason game in the next-gen stats era. Fun fact, he has 29 pressures from nose tackle this season, which leads the NFL. What do you think second place has?
I have no idea.
8. He has 29. Second place has 8.
How many teams how many nose tackles are there in the league?
Yeah, well, that's a whole separate thing. I'm not sure what the nose tackle snap rate is. I know he takes a ton of snaps at nose tackle. But he's finding tremendous amounts of pressure there. Isaiah Hodgins, who was signed off the Bills practice squad in November, had 8 catches for 105 yards. Like, this Giants team their roster is not the meme that it's been made out to be. I'm not saying they're on the tier of any team that's left in the playoffs, but they've got some pieces, and it's going to be, and we'll get into a preview, but it's going to be interesting to see how they match up with the Eagles.
Yeah. It's tough for me to talk about because I guess I'm just wrong on this Giants team. But for everything that everyone said about the Vikings, the Giants had all the same one-score luck this year. Like, I think 8 of their 9 wins were one-score games. The Giants had a minus point differential too, at -6, but they have Brian Dable, and while Kevin O'Connell's done a good job this year, and really turned them around, Brian Dable I think is already like a top 5 to 7 coach in football. I think what he's done with Daniel Jones is maybe the most impressive quarterback reclamation project I've ever seen in the history of football. I did not think Daniel Jones had this capability in him whatsoever over the last couple of weeks. And I'm still, to be quite honest, a little skeptical that this is something we'll see consistently from him. But the fact that he was able to coax this out of him at all with the weapons that they have is nothing short of incredible. I think the Eagles should win against the Giants, and we're going to talk more about that game. But I'm starting to think that the Giants are a lot better than I gave them credit for, mainly because I think Jones is better than I gave him credit for, and because I think that front four and that defensive line is problematic for anybody, even a team with as good as an offensive line as the Eagles have.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the Sunday night game. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Cincinnati won 24-17. They only put up 234 yards of offense in this game. They had a 14-play, 54-yard field goal drive to open the game, a 10-play, 60-yard drive for a touchdown on their second drive, and then to open the second half, they had a 12-play, 83-yard drive to score again. Outside of that, they had 4 drives for 33 yards. They had a fumble 6 on a QB sneak that obviously proved to be the difference in the game. It's tied 17-17. They went for the QB sneak. It was on the 1 yard line, but it was like the 1.9 yard line, to be honest. And Tyler Huntley tried to reach for the end zone, and he didn't even get close. Per Next Gen Stats tracking data, he was over a half a yard away. He's like 20 inches away. The closest the ball got to the end zone was like 20 inches. So you should not be reaching out. But Sam Hubbard scoops that, scores. That swung from a 43% win probability for Cincinnati to an 89%. That was a 46% win percentage swing. And then, of course, we could get into the clock management from Baltimore was awful. They still had a chance to tie the game. They're driving. They got 2 timeouts, a minute 17 left. J.K. Dobbins gets 11 yards to the 17-yard line, and the Ravens didn't call a timeout. They didn't go tempo. They huddled, and they did not snap the ball until there were 34 seconds left again. And then they got a penalty on a running play, no less, which pushed them backwards. And now you're in a situation you have to rely on Huntley's arm to win, and they couldn't get it done. So just egregiously awful clock management by Harbaugh there. And Cincinnati wins the game. The big blow for Cincinnati in this one is Jonah Williams leaving the game with a knee injury. It was later said it was a dislocated kneecap, and he's week to week. So they're now down multiple offensive line, and they're about to face off with the Bills pass rush. So we'll get into that in a minute. But again, chinks in the armor for all these teams. Now, I do think this is the toughest defensive matchup for the Bengals. Coming into this game, 2 of Joe Burrow's 3 worst EPA performances had come against the Ravens. And so they got that monkey off their back barely. I do think this is the worst matchup for them. And so they're going to have an easier matchup, I think, with the Bills. I even think the Chiefs, not that the Chiefs are an easier team to beat, but their defense is not going to give this Bengals offense the type of problems that the Ravens did. But you did see the chinks in the armor here for the Bengals offense.
Yeah, we'll get to the Ravens in a second. The one weird thing, and I'm a Joe Burrow guy, and I think I'd take him over Allen, and I'd probably say he's the second best quarterback in the NFL. He's weirdly never had like a signature great NFL playoff game. Like, it's weird to say because he went on a run to the Super Bowl last year. You look at his game log in the postseason, there's not one on there that'll knock your socks off. And yeah, you remember and you think back, it's like, wow, he was so good in that Titans game. The stats don't bear it out as much as I remember he was great, but he's got 6 touchdowns in 5 playoff games, which is just a weird stat you wouldn't expect because, you know, he had 6 touchdowns in 2 game stretches in certain points of the regular season. So 6 touchdowns in 5 games. Just a little weird that it's been the Bengals defense way more than it's been the Bengals offense in terms of their playoff success last year and this win this year. And honestly, if Bengals fans hear that and Joe Burrow people hear that, they're gonna think I'm being negative. I actually think that it's a good thing, that it shows that this team can win in a lot of different ways, and this team's defense is able to help them win games just as much as their offense is. And you have to imagine that Joe Burrow will eventually just win you games on his own. So I think knowing that you have that defense on the other side, and knowing that no one wants to interview Lou Anarumo, so you're going to have that defense for a long time. I think it's the Bengals, regardless of the offensive line injuries, are extremely dangerous because I think they're extremely well-rounded everywhere else. And they already showed last year that they can do it with offensive line issues. And they went on a run while Joe Burrow was getting sacked 7 times per game in the playoffs. So I don't think that their offensive line this year will be a much bigger problem than it was last year.
Yeah. Okay. Moving.
Before we move on, I think we should talk about Baltimore.
Okay.
I do think we should talk about Lamar. I feel like it's the biggest story in the sport right now, to be quite honest, judging off of the podcasts I listen to and everything I read on Twitter. It seems like, I guess before we talk about it, what is your opinion on the Lamar situation and on I kind of think you're going to come in the same spot I am, and I'm just curious to hear it from you. What's your position on Lamar not playing, and is he kind of holding out because of the contract, or is it unrelated? And then what's your opinion on him not being at the game?
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with the injury. It went from a day-to-day to days to weeks to by the end of the season to I don't know timeline, which is strange. He took to Twitter and talked about the swelling in his knee. It feels like Harbaugh is not defending him or setting the record straight in the way that he should if everything was fine there. Then you got like Sammy Watkins throwing him under the bus, which is rich coming from Sammy Watkins, who has like never played a full healthy season in his entire NFL career.
That guy's in a cult, literally. So he's everything he says should be taken lightly.
And then you've got Marlon Humphrey said that like he's like, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be saying this, but like Lamar's limping around the practice facility like every day, like. So Marlon Humphrey kind of basically stood up for him and said, I mean, he's limping visibly at practice. So I don't know where it all comes with that. If there is any question in Lamar's mind that he is healthy and ready to go, he should not play. Yep. We saw RG3 play. We saw RG3's coach, Mike Shanahan, not put the player first, and we saw RG3's career end. I don't know if he is getting pressure from Harbaugh to get out there before he's ready. If he is, he should absolutely be digging his heels in and put himself first, put his career first, because the Ravens have not signed him. The Ravens are not willing to commit to you. So if you're not ready to go, then you don't go. And if it's a contract thing, like if he's fully healthy, 100%, and it's a contract thing, I would probably feel differently about that, because that's not how you conduct business with that. You do that in training camp. You do it next year. You don't hold out of a playoff game like that. But I don't think that's what's going on here. And it doesn't, I mean, what Marlon Humphrey said, I don't know why he would lie about that. Mm-hmm. It would be unprecedented for a guy to be lying about an injury like this. Like, if you were going to make it a contract thing, you would just say, I'm not playing because you won't pay me, right? So I don't think he's making this up. As far as not going to the game, if what he said on Twitter about swelling is true, like, you're not supposed to fly. Like, flying messes with swelling. I don't know. That's a little weird. Maybe you drive there. It's a long drive. I don't know on that part of it. It is weird to me he wasn't there. And I do not think Lamar Jackson will be a Raven next year. I just don't. Yeah. I think they're done. I would refuse to play for them on a franchise tag. Mm-hmm. They've had enough time to support Lamar, to put any kind of weapons around him. They've had ample opportunities to commit to him financially, and they've done none of those. And so for me, if they tag me, I would just say I will sign the tag so you can, because if you don't sign the tag, you can't be traded. I will sign the franchise tag. I will not practice or play in a game on the franchise tag. So I'll negotiate in good faith. We can work out a long-term deal. If barring that happening, you're going to trade me or I'm going to sit out this entire season because I'm not going to play on a franchise tag.
Yeah, I totally 1000% agree. I'm generally not always saying people should push their way out and yada, yada, yada. If anyone has ever had the right to push their way out, it's Lamar Jackson. He's never been given an NFL wide receiver. And that's a bit of hyperbole, but Hollywood Brown and Rashad Bateman are the two best receivers he's ever played with. So I think that says a lot about how Baltimore has supported Lamar. And I think now that he's had this situation and the way that the front office and coaching staff has seemingly thrown him under the bus, I don't think he should play another down for that team at all. It's absolutely shameful how they've handled this situation. And also, you mentioned the time management with Harbaugh, and Harbaugh in his press conference basically said, "Oh, well, you don't know ball. So if you think what we did was wrong in terms of not calling the timeout, you just don't understand football. So it's really not important for what your opinion is." It was like basically what he said to the reporter. So glad he's feeling secure. The Harbaugh family, I went from being like pro John Harbaugh, even though I hated Jim Harbaugh for a long time, to over the last couple of years, it seems like he's very much just like the same guy as his brother, but like hit it a little bit more earlier on in his career. And now it's just kind of older and crotchetier. And that interview, I can't believe we didn't talk about this. Did you see the interview he had with the sideline reporter?
No, I don't guess I did.
Oh my God. That might, honestly, Shane, it might be worth pulling up on Twitter and watching it live on the podcast. I'm going to try to find it. Maybe we move on and I'll find it and DM it to you and we could play it live. I think it's worth it. It's that good.
Okay. The other thing, it's coming out now that apparently the Ravens are intending to use the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar, which basically lets him go negotiate a contract as a free agent with other teams, and then the Ravens get the chance to match that contract, and he has to sign it with the Ravens. And if they choose not to match it, then the team that he signs with gives them 2 first-round picks. I also think that's ridiculous. Like, if you're willing to pay Lamar what he's going to get paid on an open market, just pay it to him. Like, it would have been cheaper to negotiate that deal this offseason than to do this. Secondly, if you're not going to pay it, you could trade him for more than 2 first-round picks easily. So that would just be a totally awful move if the Ravens do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just sent you the clip. It's 30 seconds long. It is... Oh my God! If it's one of the more awkward sports interviews I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, here we go. Let me share it.
And this is right after an interception from Huntley.
Okay.
Next one.
And Tyler Huntley with that interception. You said we might see Anthony Brown. What will that take?
We'll just see how the game goes, okay? Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Listen, thank you. John Harbaugh trying to win a road.
There was a question before that where they asked about penalties, and he's like, "Yeah, can't commit penalties." Like, it was just not. And then at that point, she asked about what it would take for the backup to come in, and he goes, but we see how the game goes. It was just like, man, he really hung her out to dry.
I will say, though, let's just stop with the whole
100%.
In middle of the quarter interviews. Those are absurd. So I'm all for getting rid of those.
Yeah, I agree. No need to be like mean to someone.
Right,
I guess
right.
is my thing about it.
But no excuse to be mean to someone that's trying to do their job. But NFL, let's stop this.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Monday Night Football, Dallas just murders the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-14. Dak diced up the Bucs defense. He went 25 of 33 for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. Best game he's played in a long time. The funniest story of this game was kicker Brett Maher missing 4 consecutive extra points in this game. Mark, this guy was 50 of 53 on extra points during the season. Like, I don't know what in the world was going on, but it didn't impact the game, obviously, because it was a blowout. The Bucs, they're just a bad football team that is poorly coached, and they are poorly quarterbacked. Tom Brady looked awful last night. That early in the game, before it turned into the blowout it was, that interception he threw in the end zone was just horrendous. So awful game from the Bucs. Parsons finished with 10 pressures and a sack in this one. He kind of wrecked this game up front. But I really don't have a lot to say about this game other than the Cowboys offense looked really good. If Dak plays at that level next week, they have every shot in the world to go beat the 49ers.
Yeah, Dallas looks scary in this game. And I think what we've seen now with Dallas is, I think, more than any other team in the league, I think they have the widest variance in the NFL. I think they can look like the best team in the NFL. And I think they can look like a team that can win the Super Bowl at times. And then there's games like the game against Houston, like the game against Washington, and even at times, especially on defense, like the game against Minshew, where we saw them get absolutely torched by Minshew at times, who then showed up the next week and basically put up a nothing burger against the Saints. So I think that Dallas has shown the ability to play these types of games where they show up and you say, man, this team doesn't belong here and this team stinks. But then they beat the Vikings 40-3. They show up here and they smash the Buccaneers, which is what you're supposed to do when you get to face the team that won the crappy division at 8-9. They handled their business and they got up early and they didn't look back. And all credit to Dallas. I thought their play calling on offense, Kellen Moore, a lot of people are very negative on Kellen Moore. I saw he was getting an interview and Cowboys fans were like begging the team to hire him, and kind of the same way we saw with some of the Gannon stuff on Twitter, with some of the dumb sections of Eagles Twitter. Apparently there was a lot of that with Cowboys fans. I guess they hate Kellen Moore and they think he's an idiot and they think he's a bad play caller. I thought the play designs and the play calling for Dallas in this game were spot on. I thought that bootleg by Dak on the goal line, that was excellent. They didn't have any answer for that whatsoever. I thought that Dak played the best game he's played all year long. This is the type of game where you look at Dallas and you say, man, they absolutely can win a Super Bowl if they string 4 games together like that.
Yeah, Kellen Moore is a very good offensive play caller, in my opinion. He's a good designer, and Cowboys fans would be foolish to be rooting for him to be poached away somewhere else. And also, yeah, you're right. Like, if Dak plays at that level for 3 more games, I would consider the Cowboys a favorite to win the Super Bowl. I mean, at least to get there. I think they playing at the level they played against the Buccaneers, and it's the Buccaneers, but playing at that level, they outclass every other team in the NFC. The problem, like you said, is they're just so hit or miss. They haven't played at that level consistently, and if they haven't done it yet, I don't know that you should expect that, but it's certainly something in the back of your mind. All things considered, I'm very happy the Eagles get the Giants this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. In retrospect now, even more than before, it looks like we really lucked out there. But you absolutely know that their kicker's going to cost them their season now. It's now that they're in this position, and I've heard a lot of people like yelling at anyone who suggests that he should be cut and they should go and get a new kicker. If I don't even know what the right decision is there and what I would do. And are you even allowed to go sign a kicker and cut him?
You can sign free agents,
and they can just be active on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's the right answer, to be quite honest, but I will say if we're at this time next week talking about Dallas being down 24-23 at the end of the Niners game and they had to send out someone for a 40-yarder and he misses, like, we're going to make fun of them. Because if at this point, after a guy misses 4 extra points, if he ends up costing you a different playoff game, you're going to feel like the dumbest idiot on the planet for not simply cutting him. But it's definitely interesting. That's probably not fair, but it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm trying to think about what to compare it to, but you don't want to bet against, Patrick Mahomes, because you won't feel stupid betting on Patrick Mahomes, but you will feel stupid betting against him. It's like, you won't feel stupid bringing in a new kicker, and then if he messes up, I don't think you'll feel as stupid. But if this guy, after unprecedentedly missing 4 extra points, costs you another game, it feels like that's on you at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I would keep him. He's been good all year, but I would definitely want to figure out what was going wrong down in Tampa.
I think the yips are a thing. I don't know. Like, if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be terrified.
Maybe Tom Brady doctored the footballs again.
What's up?
I said maybe Tom Brady doctored the footballs again.
Yeah. It's a real, though, it's a real Ray Finkel situation for the Ace Ventura fans out there. Like, I think there's been a lot of kickers. Like, I think Mason Crosby lost it really fast. Vanderjagt, back in the day, was really good until he wasn't. Janikowski lost it really fast. I think kicker is one of those things where it kind of goes fast sometimes, and the yips can really mess a career up. He made a kick after the 4, but if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be absolutely terrified.
Yeah, it wouldn't make you feel good, that's for sure.
Thankfully, I'm not a darn Cowboys fan, though. Truth, that was gross just coming out of my mouth.
All right, well, let's turn the page to the divisional round. We'll do a quick preview of each of the 4 games in the divisional round. The first one is going to be the Saturday afternoon game. It's Jacksonville at Kansas City. Andy Reid versus Doug Peterson. When they met in the regular season, Mahomes threw for 331 yards and 4 touchdowns with 1 interception as the Chiefs built a 20-0 lead, but the Jags tried to come back in that one too. They ultimately never got closer than 10, but Lawrence threw for 259 and 2 touchdowns. I don't think that the Jags can win. I mean, I won't say they can't win this game. I don't think the Jags will win this game. They just had a big emotional win in Week 18 to get into the playoffs over a division rival. They had a big emotional comeback last week. Like, it's kind of easy to circle this as a letdown game, but I will never count out a Doug Peterson game, especially when he's an underdog in the postseason, where he's like 5-1 as a postseason underdog. So, but ultimately, you just trust the Chiefs quarterback and you trust the playmakers in that offense more than you trust the Jags quarterback and his playmakers. I'll take the Chiefs in this one.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Jacksonville. It was a fun story, but yeah, I definitely think this is one of those situations where I feel like a lot of people watch Wildcard Weekend and start to overrate the teams and say, like, oh, one of these teams is getting hot and going to win the Super Bowl, and overlook the bye teams. I kind of had the opposite reaction, where after watching way too close of games with the Bills and the Bengals and the 49ers, I kind of more and more feel like the Eagles and the Chiefs should be convincing favorites to get to the Super Bowl, considering the fact that they're, the Cowboys and Niners were probably the 2 of the top 3, and the Bengals and Bills are 2 of the top 3. The Eagles and the Chiefs are avoiding that. They got to avoid playing a week. Like, I'm walking out of this week saying, like, it's the Chiefs' Super Bowl to lose, to be quite honest. So I think that they get the luck of the draw here, like you said, with all of the emotional, lingering hangover possibilities for Jacksonville. It's hard to just imagine that run to continue. And if they get down early like that again, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to turtle into a shell like the Chargers did. So, the line's 8.5 here. I don't think I'd bet that. Kansas City's really bad at covering big spreads. They've shown that they will win by about a point or 2 less than the spread. But I think that they win, and I think that they'll probably get up early and handle the game.
All right, so then let's talk the night game, which is the Giants at the Eagles. I've got a question for you, a conspiracy theory, if you will, that I'm going to pitch to you here. Think back to Doug Peterson being in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And what was the injury update he would always give? He would say a guy was day to day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he would miss 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That was like the kiss of death for an Eagles player, to be called day to day by Doug Peterson. And you think back to last year and earlier this year, as guys have gotten hurt, there's just no information ever given by the coaching staff about these injuries. Now all of a sudden you have Jalen Hurts' injury. And you have Jalen Hurts saying to the media, it's a good thing there was a bye week, indicating that like he might have been really struggling to play this week. Sirianni saying after the game in Week 18 that Hurts was in a whole lot of pain during the game. Like, why are they being so forthcoming about injuries, about the most important player in their franchise, when they literally never talk about injuries? Like,
yeah,
I'm not by any stretch of the imagination insinuating that Hurts didn't get hurt in the Chicago game, because he absolutely did. But I do wonder if they are overplaying this injury thing, and it's really not that bad. And there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on right now. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but I just find it odd that all of a sudden the Eagles are talking so much about this injury and they're being so forthcoming.
Yeah, it is bizarre that they are just continuously talking about this. I kind of am on the exact same wavelength as you there. Lane Johnson said on McAfee that he's feeling good. He's going to play. So, it feels like, things are pointing in the right direction. I haven't seen an update on Avante. I'm assuming he's not playing. But outside of that, things are looking good. They're, I think, an 8-point favorite right now against the Giants. Another spread that's probably just a bit too big. Probably wouldn't take that at that. But I know this isn't a gambling show, but I will just say a couple player props that I would take a look at here. As always, Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown scored or get a rushing touchdown is the best value bet in sports. He is always more likely to score a rushing touchdown than he's not. Boston Scott owns the New York Giants. I forget what is the number. It's like 13 touchdowns, 10 against the Giants, or
he has
something
17
crazy.
Career touchdowns, and 10 of them are against the Giants.
Yeah. That's so you're almost obligated to bet Boston Scott at like plus 360 to score a touchdown. And then my person, those are ones that I bet, or a lot of people bet when Boston Scott plays the Giants every time. This is my little nugget. You mentioned Hawkinson. I believe he had 10 for 126 and a touchdown against the Giants. Watch out for Dallas Goedert. Very similar player and very similar routes that he runs to TJ Hawkinson. So occupies kind of the same space in the field. I think Dallas Goedert, Sirianni and the Eagles staff apparently chilled out watching the game with some Pizza Huts. So I hope that they noticed, all right, let's get Dallas Goedert involved. And I think I'm going to take his over at 4.5 catches. I'm going to take his anytime touchdown, and I'll probably take his over on reception yards when that gets released. But I think Dallas Goedert is a big-time X factor in this matchup.
Yeah, for sure. The linebackers for the Giants are really bad, so it should be a big Goddard game. The caveat to that, I'm curious to see how they play defensively. Like, Wink Martindale is known for being like the just man cover 1, cover 0 blitz sort of guy, and that's changed a little bit. Week 1 through 14, they ranked second in man coverage rate, first in blitz rate. Week 15 through 17, it went to 13th man coverage rate, 15th blitz rate. Against the Vikings, they only blitzed on like 7 snaps. And so, obviously different offense, different team they were playing, all of that. But you could make an argument that they would be better served to play more of a zone coverage type approach. They were bracketing Justin Jefferson, which had really good results. So, if I was them, I'm not sure that I wouldn't put Adoree Jackson on Devonta Smith and then bracket A.J. Brown. That might give you a better chance. But given the uncertainty about Hurts and about his injury, I do think they're going to blitz a lot. They're going to try to get home. They're going to try to hit Hurts. They're going to try to disrupt that. But this is a more healthy team than who the Eagles blew out in Week 14. They have Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney, Leonard Williams. They're all back, and these are all guys that they were missing in that Week 14 game. So, you look at this roster, you look at the rosters, and there is no position group that the Giants have the advantage besides running back. But there's also concerns about what they do defensively. You've got Dexter Lawrence on Jason Kelsey, who struggles with bigger guys. You've got their blitz happiness, which really hurts the Eagles' offense. So there's some concerns. There's health concerns. I mean, Lane Johnson might think he's fine, and Lane Johnson might play one snap and go, all right, sorry, I can't do it. Like, I can't play. And, Jalen Hurts might land on that shoulder wrong. So there's lots of things to this game, lots of layers to this game. But the Eagles should win this game. The Eagles are clearly the better team. The Bills were clearly a better team than the Dolphins, and they won by 3. The Bengals were clearly the better team than the Ravens, and it took a fumble 6 that went 98 yards on a QB sneak to win that game. So strange stuff happens in January. There are no easy games in January, and there's certainly no easy divisional rematches in January. So the Eagles are going to have to be on their A game. I think it's going to be a grinded out sort of game, but I do expect the Eagles to win this one.
Yeah, they better. This is, I said, we were talking off air, and I've said this a lot on Twitter and to everyone, but this is quite obviously the best possible scenario for the Eagles in terms of drawing the Giants instead of the Cowboys in the second round. And if you would have told us before the year or even last week that we get Daniel Jones in the second round to get to the NFC Championship, I think we're taking that 10 out of 10 times. The Giants are the team that I hate the most in professional sports. That is, above the Celtics, above any baseball teams, above even the Dallas Cowboys. They are the team that I hate the most above the Cowboys because I hate their fans very much. I think New York fans are the worst in sports. But the New York Giants beating the Philadelphia Eagles in a year that I have Super Bowl aspirations, I think this would go down as the most painful loss I've had as an Eagles fan. This would be a soul-crushing loss as an Eagles fan for me personally. And it's funny because with the Phillies, with the Sixers, I'm able to easily point without even thinking about it to the loss that crushed me the most, like the worst loss that I can remember as a fan for those teams. With the Eagles, I weirdly don't have that one that sticks out, that sticks in my craw as that worst loss that I can remember that crushed me the most. This would be that game.
Yeah, it would be devastating, especially if you get like a Giants-Cowboys NFC title game. That would just be disgusting to have to watch.
Oh, well, actually, real quick, when I said that, what popped in your head? What's your like the worst loss of your lifetime as an Eagles fan? I was thinking the Arizona NFC title game. Like, that's the one that I was the most upset by because it felt like we were so close, and then Larry Fitzgerald we couldn't cover him. But like we weren't even that good that year. So I don't have that one. I guess a lot of people would say the Alshon drop.
Yeah, I mean, people love to say that they would have won that game.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, they still had to score a touchdown. It wasn't like that drop was in the end zone. So
exactly.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to think about what the most disappointing loss for me was. Especially, I don't have as long of a history as a lot of people do as being an Eagles fan either. I liked the Eagles, but I was much bigger into college football for a long time and just kind of passingly watched the Eagles. So
yeah. I was a kid for the Bucks and Panthers and Rams NFC title games. Like, I kind of remember everything Super Bowl year on. That's like my bank. Like, I kind of remember the NFC championships just knowing about them, but like my football watching life was basically that Super Bowl year on. So yeah, the Super Bowl, the first one, I guess, is a tough loss, but yeah, I don't have that one, like the Sixers game 5 against the Hawks, pretty easy one that I can think of right away. The Phillies, the game 5 against the Cardinals. So that's really easy. The Eagles, I don't want to be able to easily point out divisional round 2023. against Daniel freaking Jones. I really don't want Daniel Jones to be the guy that ends the Eagles season after years of me talking crap about him.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the Sunday divisional. That's the right word. Games here. Cincinnati at Buffalo. The Bills' O-line is better than the Bengals' O-line when it's fully healthy. And the Bengals aren't close to fully healthy. Left tackle Jonah Williams is out with a dislocated kneecap. Right tackle La'el Collins is out with a knee injury. Right guard Alex Kappa is out with an injured ankle. So the Bills should be able to generate pressure on Burrow. Now, Burrow had a lot of pressure generated on him last year in the playoffs, and it didn't seem to matter. So, we'll see. I think the Bills should be watching the Ravens tape. The Ravens were trying to disguise what they did all the time in that game. They were creating chaos, and Buffalo just doesn't do that. They kind of play their shells, and they try to just out-execute you. And I think they should change that for this game, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do to change your identity. But I will say, and we talked about this earlier, but Josh Allen has a lot better chance to implode in this game than Joe Burrow does. And so I'm taking the Bengals in this game because at this point I just don't trust Josh Allen anymore.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The Bengals are a 5.5 point underdog here, and I understand the worries about the offensive line, but like I said, those same worries existed last year, and they beat the Chiefs on the road and went to the Super Bowl. So I don't see any reason that they can't do the same here. Also, this game should be on a neutral field. It's absolutely ridiculous that they are going to Buffalo to play this game after they were up 7-3, driving with a chance to make this game in Cincinnati. And obviously, terrible thing that transcends sports. But if you're going to put in something for the Bills where they get a neutral site game against Kansas City, I understand why Cincy doesn't get one against Kansas City, but I think it would have at least been fair to have given neutral site in this game as well for Cincy's purposes. But that's sour grapes on my behalf as someone with a large Bengals to win the AFC future.
Yeah. Well, I think that's still going to be alive after this week because I do think the Bengals are going to get them here.
I agree. And even with the offensive line concerns, I hate everything about the way that the Bills have played the last 2 weeks. And I think it got slept on 2 weeks ago against the Patriots because they had the 2 kick returns. But the Patriots outplayed them in that game. The Bills did not play all that well in a game that they were still trying to play for that neutral site AFC championship for the rights to that. So the Bills have not played great for the last 8 quarters of football outside of huge splash plays. And even on offense, that's basically what they've been. It's these huge splash plays. So if those go quiet at all, they're in some serious trouble. So I think the Chiefs, honestly, it's interesting. Actually, here's a question. If you're the Chiefs, you probably feel way better about facing the Bills in a vacuum about facing the Bills than you the Bengals. The Bengals are kind of your boogeyman. They've beaten you 3 times in 2 years. But since you would have to go to Kansas City, whereas Buffalo is in Atlanta at a neutral site, who are you rooting for on Sunday if you wrap it up on Saturday for Kansas City? That's it. I hadn't thought about this. That's interesting to me.
I feel like you probably want to play home field, so the players are probably pulling for Cincinnati because they want home field. They want to avenge.
They probably want to
loss.
avenge, yeah.
I think the better matchup is Buffalo on a neutral site, though. I think how the game ended last year would be not in Joe Burrow, would be in Josh Allen's head. I think you could see him pushing too hard early in the game. So, I mean, psychoanalyzing a guy I don't know, but I think the better matchup for them is the Bills, but I think they would probably want the Bengals.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I thought that was interesting. By the way, they really backloaded the games here. I think they kind of put the potential maybe blowouts on Saturday with Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Philly, New York, but they put the 2 primetime, don't miss them, Tiffany franchises, Niners, Cowboys, and then Joe Burrow, Josh Allen on Sunday. It's kind of nice that we get to to get our football out of the way on Saturday, to watch this stuff on Sunday. I think that there was definitely some strategy behind that.
Yeah, for sure. Although you couldn't put the other NFC game on Saturday since the winner would be coming off of Monday Night Football, but which is an advantage for the Eagles. They get the Giants, who will be coming off of a short week now. And
It's really interesting.
They will have extra time because assuming they win, it'll be a normal week for the winner of Dallas and San Francisco. But the Eagles will have an extra day. So the Eagles are going to have a rest advantage in every playoff game this offseason.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they didn't put Bengals-Bills on Saturday and put Eagles-Giants on Sunday. And you would have had Bengals and Bills on the same amount of rest. But instead they put that on Sunday and put the Giants-Eagles on Saturday, screwing the Giants. But like you said, you couldn't put two NFC games on.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last NFC game is Cincinnati. Reading the wrong line on my schedule here. It's Dallas at San Francisco on Sunday Night Football. Kyle Shanahan knows Dan Quinn. They worked together in the past. He will call things specifically designed to mess up Dan Quinn's defense. Like, he knows all the rules. He knows how to bend it. He knows the answers to the test before he takes it. And so I fully expect San Francisco to come into this game with their offense locked and loaded. The question becomes the same question it was last week. How is Brock Purdy going to do under the lights? Because I thought he faltered early in that game against Seattle. If you falter early in a game against Dallas, and if Dak plays as well as he did against Tampa Bay, you might be in a 20-point hole. And then you can't lean on that running game. You're going to have to push the ball downfield and try to generate explosives. And granted, their offense has been good at doing that. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. Micah Parsons versus Trent Williams is going to be a matchup I can't wait to watch unfold in this game. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to pick in this game. I'm going to pick the 49ers because similar to the whole Josh Allen thing, I don't trust Dak not to implode. This team has been so streaky. I'm going to bet on the steady team, not the high variance team in the playoffs. And it's ridiculous that I'm more confident that Mr. Irrelevant won't implode than Dak Prescott. And it's not a shot at Dak as quarterback. I think Dak is a very, very good quarterback. But they've had issues with turnovers. And if the turnovers start to flow, San Francisco can get a lead, and then they can play from that lead. I think they can protect it. So obviously, Eagles aside, this is the game I'm most excited to watch. And I'll pick San Francisco in a close one.
I don't ever remember an NFL playoff game that I have had less of a definitive opinion on who is going to win than this one. I've went back and forth in my head so many times. It's such a close game. I think it gets decided by a field goal at the end. I'm going to pick Dallas, I guess.
Wait. You just said it's going to be decided by a field goal, and then you picked the team whose kicker missed 4 extra points?
You're right. San Fran. You just convinced me with that exactly. I'm going with San Fran. See, I've already switched. I have no pick on this game. I really think it's such a toss-up. I think Dallas is really, really talented, and I think if Dak plays, it's Dak. To be quite honest, you just put it well, and it's a good reason to pick San Fran. This game comes down to Dak Prescott. It really does, more than Brock Purdy. You said you have more faith in Brock Purdy not to implode, and you're right, because he will not be put in position to implode. Dak has to win them the game or lose them the game. Brock Purdy doesn't have to do that. So Brock Purdy just has to kind of do his job. Just stay in your lane. Dak has to do a lot more for the Cowboys to win than Purdy has to do for the Niners to win. So, it's all going to come down to how Dak plays. If Dak throws for 300 yards and 3+ touchdowns, Dallas wins the game. If he doesn't, they probably don't. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, Dak will either beat the 49ers or he will beat the Cowboys.
I totally 100% agree with that.
All right. Well, that is going to about wrap it up for our Wildcard Weekend review, divisional preview show. Before we get out of here, Mark, do you have any final thoughts for the people?
You go first, and then maybe if I have one. No, I have it. There it goes. I have it, and it's on Brandon Staley. I had Shane on my radio show on Saturday, and for the first time ever, I let a guest of mine give out the Donkey Brains of the week, and I had Shane give it out to Brandon Staley for playing Mike Williams in Week 18. And I have a strong feeling that there will be a back-to-back Donkey Brains of the Week award winner in Brandon Staley once again this week.
Yeah, he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it.
He has certified Donkey Brains.
All right. For my final thoughts, I'm going to talk NFL playoffs. NFL, we do not need a Monday Night Football game for Wildcard Weekend. It is a massive disadvantage for a team to have to play Monday Night Football on Wildcard Weekend and turn around and play on a short week for a playoff game. Nobody needs a Monday night playoff game. I mean, it's the Cowboys this year, so I don't hate it as much as I would if it was anybody else, but there's just no reason for that. Put 3 games on Saturday, put 3 games on Sunday. There should be no Monday Night Football when it comes to the playoffs. I understand why you want to do Saturday and Sunday. I totally get it. You don't want 2 games on at the same time. That's fine. To the best of your ability, though, the playoff schedule should be set up where, like, NFC teams play Saturday, AFC teams play Sunday, rinse and repeat for the conference or the divisional round, rinse and repeat for the conference title game, and then you get the extra week off before the Super Bowl, so that one-day advantage doesn't really matter. That's how the playoffs should be structured if we're talking about fairness. And let's be honest, it's not going to hurt your bottom dollar any. You're still going to have all the games on. Everybody's watching them. I think we need to clean up the playoff schedule.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree, but I thought I was talking on mute there for a second. My apologies. But I thought that it got my workday done a little faster on Monday to get home to watch Monday Night Football. So if it's that simple, like I guess I understand. But man, it's definitely a disadvantage to the teams playing. Not that I'm crying for the Cowboys.
Yeah. They can go cry into their home Thursday night or their home Thursday Thanksgiving game. So they don't
Yes.
get to complain about it because they have a scheduling advantage every year, but it is a disadvantage and it would be easily fixed. So, all right, that is going to do it here. That'll wrap up episode number 88 of Chalk Talk. Thank you guys that joined live and commented. Those of you listening later, we really appreciate you as well. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. You can drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts as well. If you are a fan of a team that did not make the playoffs, be sure you don't miss our last episode, last week's episode 87, Fixing Your Franchise, where we talked bullet points for every team for the offseason. When the season is over, we will still have you guys covered through the offseason, doing some creative stuff. We'll be doing some draft stuff, although it'll be in a different feed with details to come on that later. But you guys keep it tuned here. Give us a follow on Twitter. I'm at _TPL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.